Hey guys, it's Ashley, and today we are going to be talking about Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I love how that rhymes. I know so many of you have been waiting for me to get around to reading this book, and I finally did, and I have to say, I really loved this book. Oh my god. I don't think that I was really expecting it to be as good as it was, just because there was so much hype around it, and I was just wondering how any series can live up to that much hype. But I have to say, it really did, honestly. I really loved this book. For those of you who don't know, which is probably like 10 of you, because I know that so many people have read this series. This book is about Selena Sardathian, and she is a notorious assassin in Arelay, with the kind of world, I guess, that this book is set in. Her parents died when she was young, and she was taken on by the king of the assassins and trained to be an assassin. And so one day she's caught and she's put into the Endovier salt mines, which is basically like a death camp, and she survives for a year before suddenly the crown prince of Adarlan, Dorian, decides he's going to make her his champion in his father's game that he's kind of starting. His father wants his own personal assassin, his own champion to kind of do his dirty work, and so he's decided to host this competition, and so each one of his council members has to pick a champion, and so Dorian picks Selena, and so he goes and he offers her, hey, you can either be my champion or you can die in the salt mines. And obviously she's not going to die in the salt mines. So she goes and she becomes his champion, and she goes through the tournament and everything, and it's literally it is such a wild ride, honestly. There's so much going on in this book that oh my god, that's not even a synopsis, basically, because there's so much more in this book than that even tells you about. But even though that might be kind of intimidating to some people, having that much in this book, it's really good, and it's not hard to follow at all. Obviously, after all the praise that I have already given this, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I really loved it. I don't know how many more times I can say that. I actually buddy read this with Keely over at Mermaid Keely, and we both agree that it was just a really good book. It was just a really good book. And it was different because I had read Harry Potter and the Raven Cycle, and I had been familiar with those because of my sister and because Harry Potter is such a popular series. And so jumping into something that I had no idea what it was about, let alone a high fantasy, it was just refreshing, and I really enjoyed it. So like I said before, the Throne of Glass series is a high fantasy, which means that everything from the world to the politics to the characters, obviously the characters, but everything is made up. Now that means pronunciation is a tough thing to handle, because honestly I had so many problems pronouncing some of these words in these books, and it wasn't even that difficult of a word. Kale's actually a really funny story. When I started reading this book, I had been pronouncing kale as coal. That's just how I read it in my mind, and so I started saying that. And so throughout the entire book, I had been where is this Kale character that everyone's been talking about? When does he come in? I don't understand. And then finally, toward the middle of the book, I realized that I had been saying his name wrong the whole time. And it was just kind of like a slap in the face, because it was 3:30 in the morning and I was laughing hysterically in my room. You ask Keely, because I texted her as soon as I realized, and I was just hysterical. Another thing that I really loved about this book was the character of Selena. I loved Selena. Now there's not a whole lot of development in this book because obviously it's the first book and there's not really anywhere that she can go. But you do learn a lot about her, and I love the different facets of her personality. I love that she's ruthless and cunning enough to be an assassin, but she also enjoys the girly things in life, you know? She likes the frilly dresses and the gems and the pearls, and she also has these fears too. She fears the king because of something that happened in her past. She fears losing and being sent back to Endovier in fear that she will die within the next year. She has these fears just like any one of us, yet she pulls off this confident, sarcastic attitude so well. I realized that Selena actually reminded me a lot of Jace from the Mortal Instruments, just because of all of her comebacks and all of her wittiness and sarcasm, and I love it. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention before I go on to the spoilery section, because this is a high fantasy, Sarah J Maas had to create this whole political system to go along with her world, and I think that she did a fantastic job of kind of blending the two worlds together of politics and characters. She didn't focus too much on the characters and the scenes, but also managed to put in little snippets of what was going on in the world. Like, as the kind of reader that I am, I enjoy reading about characters more than I do politics, and when there's just a huge long section that has to do with politics and the world that they're in, I just kind of skim over it more than I should. But there were points in this where I was like reading it, like needing to know what was happening, because it was just kind of splashed in there at certain points, and I really enjoyed that because it kept me aware of what was going on in the world and also what was going on in Selena's life, like immediately. So that was something that I really appreciated a lot of her. And so I think that is all that I have to say. That doesn't really spoil this book. If you haven't picked this up yet, you really should. I kind of regret taking as long as I did, but at least I have like 6 other books to get to, and I don't have to wait for them. Except for, you know, Empire Storms, but by the time I finish this series, that book will already be out, so no worries. So yeah, if you haven't read this book, go away, come back when you have, and we can talk about it. So, bye! Alright, so basically I forgot to take notes the entire first part of this book. Like the first 104 pages, I completely forgot to take notes. So I don't have my immediate reactions to what's going on, but I do remember kind of where I was at that point. I remember that when we're first introduced to Selena in like the very first chapter, and Chaol is kind of walking her around the hallways and trying to confuse her, and she's obviously not being confused, and she just keeps going on and on about how she knows exactly how to escape and how to get herself out of that situation. I feel like that just introduced you to just how badass she is. She is so cunning and smart and intelligent and ruthless, and I love her so much. In the middle, when she's eating breakfast and she keeps pouring spoonfuls of brown sugar into her oatmeal, I was like dying, because that reminds me so much of my mom, because every time we go out to this breakfast place we always eat at, she always has to put like 7 spoonfuls of brown sugar in her oatmeal, and I'm just like, why? It's like so adorable compared to like what she's being portrayed as. I don't know why, it really doesn't make any sense, but I really liked that. Okay, and so like I said, because I had that Chaol name crisis where I didn't know that Chaol was Chaol until like the middle of the book. Once I did though, I realized just how much better he is for her. Personally, I think that he's the better choice, but you know, I mean, I don't know what happens in the end. Please don't tell me what happens after this, because I don't want to be spoiled. But I just feel like Chaol would make such a better love interest for her. And I was talking to Kaylee, we definitely agreed on that, because Chaol is such a warrior and he's been trained and he knows how to fight. Chaol does it on like a daily basis, whereas Dorian deals with more of like the politics, you know? I feel like he's a really good match for her. Also because they both have these like dark, mysterious pasts, and so I feel like he understands her a lot better, because both of her parents are dead, and she was taken from her home and she was almost killed when she was like 8, and then she was raised by this random guy who taught her how to kill people. So obviously she's got this like dark past that she wants to keep locked away. And there's also that little backstory snippet that we get of Chaol. Chaol wanted to stay at the castle with Dorian instead of going back to his own family. Dorian made it so that there was an offering of a position to kind of train in the guard, and his father didn't even like protest. His father just was like, fine, if you don't want to be with me, then I don't want you here either. You're not my son. It just made me think that he was that much better for her, that he understands at that point. Whereas Dorian, I mean, Dorian has kind of like the thing where he doesn't agree with his dad too, but just Chaol. Come on, just Chaol. And oh my god, that one scene where they're at temple or whatever they're at like the Yulmus church ceremony thing or whatever, and they both fall asleep next to each other. Oh my god, I loved that so much. I can't even explain. Like, when I realized that he had fallen asleep too, I was dying. He's perfect for her. And so while Kale takes a while to kind of warm up to Selena and open up to her, Dorian is pretty much immediately infatuated, and that immediately put me off from him because I'm like, you don't even know this girl. You hired her to be your champion so that you'd win. And you're like infatuated with her. There was one point in the book though where I was actually Team Dorian for like 2 seconds, but it was only because we hadn't had a Kale scene in such a long time. Dorian just came, and that one scene where he's in Selena's room right after his kingdom just butchered and massacred those 500 Isleway people. He opened up to her in such a way that made me like love him so much. But then the next Kale scene, I was Team Kale again. Like there was no question. Keeping on going with this kind of theme of the characters that I've got going on, when Nehemia, whose name I also had major trouble pronouncing, was introduced to the book, I kind of was debating on who was more badass, honestly. Like, was it Nehemia or was it Selena? I love the women taking power in this book. Like, you go, girls, you go. When she's first introduced, there are these rumors going around that she's working with the rebels of Isleway to kind of push back Adarlan from taking over and conquering their world or their city. And that little like rumor mixed with the end knowing she has magic and she has the power to use these word marks and do stuff with them, like she's just such a badass. I can't even, like, I can't. How do you not love Nehemia? Like, just how? And then something else that I thought was just annoying, I feel like we could have gone the entire book without Kaltain. Like, I feel like if we had just taken out her character, the entire story could have gone the same way that it did. The only difference was that somebody else would have had to poison her goblet. That's pretty much the only role that Kaltain played in the whole book. And I kind of understand that without her, I guess Dorian wouldn't have been pushed towards Selena enough by just like repulsion of, you know, Kaltain. But that would have made me a lot happier because then Selena would have gone more toward Kale. So, Kaltain, what are you doing? Like, go away. And also, I called her being possessed, like, the second scene that she was in. I called it. And so the whole book, though, is basically focused on these competitive tasks and this competition to become the King's Champion. So, I guess I should go into a little bit of what I thought about those. When they were first introduced, I thought that they were going to be killing matches. I thought that it was going to be like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, go into this Colosseum with dragons and battle to the death. That's basically what I thought it was gonna be, except instead of dragons it would be another person and they would be battling to the death. That's like my first thought. When we get to the first task and it ends up being archery, I was just kind of like, what? There's no killing? What? And I was kind of disappointed. Not that I wanted people to die, but I kind of wanted some fighting. But, you know, whatever works. And then through the competition and through all of the tests, Selena meets Nox. And I love Nox. As for favorite characters, Nox is probably behind Kale, like right behind Kale. I love Kale, but I also loved Nox. You don't learn a whole lot about him, but you know that he's helping Selena train and she's helping him train. And at the point where he's telling her that all of his gold is on her winning the entire competition, I'm just like, same. I really hope that Nox comes back in the series. Don't tell me if he does. I don't want to know if he does, but I really hope that he does because I really like his character. I think that he's really lighthearted and easygoing, but he knows when to take things seriously, and so I really, really like him. I feel like he's a good friend. He's a really good friend. Another scene that I really loved was the Yulemas ball. When I heard that it was a masquerade ball and she was gonna show up like randomly, the first thing that I thought of was that one scene in That Cinderella Story when Selena Gomez goes into the masquerade ball and she dances with Drusilla, and Drusilla's like, man, gotta find this girl. And so he goes everywhere for her, but it wasn't really that. Obviously, she doesn't run away, and Dorian and Kale know exactly who she is, but it just reminded me of that so much. But like I said in the beginning, I really enjoyed Sarah J Maas's ability to kind of blend politics and character development so well. And it really kept me involved in the story and involved in what was going on in the background that would affect the characters in that time. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about what I think is going on, and you guys let me know if I'm right or if I missed anything, okay? Because I really want to know exactly what's going on in this book, in the background, like the political specter, before I go into the next book. From what I gather, the world and the first settlers were kind of the Fae. And so when they're in Oakwald Forest coming from the Endovier salt mines, she talks about how the Fae were the oldest settlers and they were the human-like immortal beings that possessed magic that kind of looked over the forest. That's kind of how the world was in the beginning. But then when humans started rising to power and the king of Adarlan currently decided that he was going to kind of ban all magic and he was going to ban all magic users and kind of kill them off, magic slowly started disappearing. That really makes me really sad and actually pretty pissed off because the king of Adarlan, he's such a hypocrite because he was the one who decided he was going to ban all the magic and he was going to destroy all the magic users, and he drove the Fae out and he drove all the little fairies and the nymphs out. Yet in the end, we find out that he's using the weird marks and the dark magic to get what he wants. Like, does that not sound hypocritical to you? I don't understand somebody who would ban something and then go against their word and say, well, I'm gonna use it to get what I want. Like, I hate that. It makes him so despicable to me. I hate him. Like, I hated him before I knew about that, but now I just hate him even more. But anyways, so after the king kind of bans magic and magic goes away slowly, he starts trying to conquer different lands. So he starts going around and conquering different parts of Arelay, and then he gets to the Isleway. I think that's what they're called. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but he gets to the Isleway and he tries to conquer and take them over, but they rebel and they protest, and so that is where Nehemia comes in because she's the princess of Isleway and she is working with the rebels, and I love her so much. Go Nehemia! Another thing that I found really interesting when they were in Oakwald Forest and she was remembering all of the burning down of cities and of towns and houses that happened when the king banned magic, she mentioned that she had lost her abilities and that she remembers what she used to be able to do, but not anymore. And so that kind of to me hints at that she was kind of not really Fae, but she was part Fae at least, and that she used to wield magic. But I'm really curious to know how that will play out into the rest of the series because I feel like that makes her a triple threat. I don't know what the third part of that triple threat is, but it's a triple threat. All in all, I'm really curious and interested and really wanting to know what happens in the rest of this series because I know there are characters like that. Who are they? Aelin and Rowan. Characters that I've heard of through book 2 but have not actually gotten to in the series. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And another thing I wanted to ask you guys is, when do you recommend reading The Assassin's Blade? Because I know that on her website she recommends reading it first, but I decided to read Throne of Glass first because I didn't feel like buying The Assassin's Blade. Let me know when you think I should read it, because if I should read it next, I'm gonna need to get it, but also if I need to read Crown of Midnight first, I also need to get that. So it's just a matter of which book I need to get first. So let me know, because you guys know a lot more about this series than I do. Obviously. Alright, that is going to be it. Thank you for sticking around through this absurdly long book talk. Pretty sure my raw footage is like 45 minutes long. Let me know what you guys thought about everything that I said in the comments below, and let me know if you are Team Chaol or Dorian after this point, because I don't care about any of the characters after this book, only the ones that I actually know about. So let me know. So if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to be notified of when I upload new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye!